Good morning. This is the 16th day of September 2021. Richland Board of Commissioners is adjourning. Darrell Banks, Commissioner, with fellow Commissioners Tony Vero and Cliff Mears, Stacy Crawl, our clerk. We have been joined by Ike Hickman, CAC Erie, Huron, and Richland County. He's going to give us an overview of his programs. And on the new media side, we have all of them. We have Al Lawrence from the News Journal, Carl Hunnell from Richland Source, and Archie McMillan is back with us from WMFD. So, Ike, what you got going on out there?
Well, as you've heard through the pandemic, we've received a lot of grant funding. The first one was CSBG CARES funding. We got $811,000 for the whole agency. For Richland County, we allocated roughly $300,000 for it. We also received in November, it's called CRFESP, which was Coronavirus Era Funds.
Say that 10 times fast.
Yeah, I call it the alphabet soup we have right now. For that, we were allocated $568,582. We also received from the U.S. Treasury, originally was $2.1 million for the agency, $800,000 for Richland County, almost $900,000.
Funds to be used for
rent, mortgage, and utilities. We are currently out of mortgage assistance. We have a little bit left in our regular CSBG. We have so far in Richland County alone have spent $1.7 million for rent, mortgage, and utility assistance. And that was out of $2 million for Richland County. We also received CDBG funds from the state. It was CDBG-coronavirus for Richland County, $515,000. And that is spent. It's been depleted. We have our regular CSBG community service block grant that is coming up due to reapply for. With that being said, I plan on working with Charlene Newman, as people are saying we're duplicating services. To be on the record and clear that we require a denial letter for any duplicate services from PRC in order for them to receive our funding. That way the same people, same residents aren't getting the same benefit.
So before you approve it, you get a letter from
Job.
another agency.
Yes. In our CSBG CARES funding, which was originally in March of 2020, we added dental assistance, car repair, a child care subsidy, and then laptops for children, kindergarten through 12, and food vouchers. All the customers and clients must prove documentation for each that they've either been denied by PRC or their child remote learning, and then they can get a laptop to do the remote learning. The car repair and the child care assistance, we have to have a denial from Job and Family Services. So that way we're not duplicating benefits.
Is that it?
That's pretty much it.
Sounds like an awful lot.
Are you anticipating any more funding?
Well,
Additional funding than be on your normal.
yes. So we just received an $11 million increase for rent and utilities.
$11 increase.
Yep, for Erie, Huron, and Richland counties.
How much do you have that? How much will be allocated to Richland?
I'm roughing around 3.54 million for Richland County. And that's through the U.S. Treasury. We have not been able to sit down to our budget yet. We just got notified of it. that they were increasing our grant. One thing in the community, people are upset that they can't get through. Since COVID, we've seen a 200% increase in clientele. Our phone systems, we're trying to upgrade them because they're going down because they can't handle the call volume.
Can you use some of your additional monies for that?
Yeah, they're letting us do technical upgrades and all that. So we are working on that with our IT. In a 3-week span, we received 12,000 calls. And we're trying to get the phones. There's 8 of us in the office, and that's one thing, I understand they call up here and complain, but we're trying.
I think we're just gonna start giving your personal cell then, but 12,000 a month, you said?
In 3 weeks.
3 weeks. We should say, hey, if you're calling for community reaction, you can reach Ike Hickman personally at such and such and such.
Please don't.
I heard someone on radio, television say, once this $300 extra, all the extra unemployment people,
Mhm.
that's going to run out so that people will go back to work. And someone said, check what happened in the states that have canceled it, and people aren't going back to work because there's so many other things to fall back on. Evidently, this is some of the things they're falling back on. And I don't mean to sound cold and cruel, but we got people begging for people to work. And it's cold and cruel to think people ought to work for a living. And with a lot of exceptions, I guess I'm cold and cruel. And I appreciate the good work that you do and that you're not duplicating service, and you're appreciated, Ike. I just like to see more people go back to work.
I agree, Commissioner. And that's another thing we're having issues with is keeping staffing.
Yeah.
Our turnover is high.
Where are people going? They view
Go home,
and not work at all.
correct. So I understand what you're saying, Mr. Banks.
Oh, you don't have to call him, mister.
Your Highness.
I've been called a lot of things in my life.
Are you still not seeing people in person? Just
Correct. We're doing everything over the computers and phones. We don't,
Don't you think that could be a reason why your call volume's going up though? If you don't see anyone in person?
I don't think so. I mean, people are utilizing their cell phones, the library 211. And I look for us to stay closed through the remainder of the year. Just from what I'm seeing throughout the state with other community actions. Southern Ohio, I seen a bunch of them at a conference and they're all still working from home.
Richland County Commissioners are here live and in person.
Thank you. I do want to let you know that I had to make a sheriff's report. Someone broke a office window from the outside. Working on getting that fixed with maintenance.
Thank you, Ike. Nice, our buddy.
Thing to mention, you said something when you came in, you was going to mention that people entered your office when it comes time.
So we did ask maintenance to put a door on the back part of the hallway there, because people are trying to come in that way and it's a safety hazard. There is a door put up.
So they should come in, when you're allowing
Correct.
visits in, they need to come in through the,
Addison Road entrance.
thank you.
Appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you, commissioners.
All right, Ike,
Thank you,
you
Ike.
well, bud.
You guys have any questions? Carl, Al?
I'm good, but thank you.
Thank you.
I'm good too.
Okay,
I don't know if you're good. You might just not have any questions.
we think you're good, Al. Okay, even though you don't, your humor,
So moved on the record of proceedings for September 14th.
thank you.
Commissioner Banks?
Yes,
Commissioner Barrow,
Yes.
Commissioner Mears,
Yes.
Okay, can we get approval of requisitions?
So moved.
And second?
Banks,
Yes.
Barrow,
Yes.
Commissioner Mears,
Okay, can we get a motion to approve the weekly transfers? Appropriations.
Couple things. Erica Thomas apologizes for not putting the reason for the transfer on her request is to transfer monies to pay for their AutoCAD license. And then I wanted to see if you two were comfortable, granted, it's only $1,200, but Board of Elections, sorry, let me get to it. No, it's more than that. Hold on.
Auto title?
No, hold on. I'm getting there. I left a message for Mr. Finfageld. It's more than that.
Or 29,000?
They are seeking to take money out of the salary line item. Termination payouts and move it into the salary line item. Do we know what that's for? Because we don't usually permit additional monies into salary lineups, and I certainly didn't put any justification.
no, but I know we budgeted at the beginning of the year for the termination payout, and we put more in than what was needed for the one that left.
So
But
that,
yeah, I do not know why they are moving it back into salary.
then I would make a motion without a reason given for additional monies moving into salary line item to approve all transfer and appropriation requests, excluding the Board of Elections request until we receive appropriate justification to do so.
That's 15,000 that was going to go into.
So let me do that. I'll-
So what does this last line mean? The money to be reallocated that should not have been transferred. So it was put in salary and it shouldn't have been there?
They're seeking to move monies into the salary line item.
It sounds like they put more money into the termination
Payout.
payout than they should have.
But, right, I need a justification to understand where the initial transfer came from. And I presume, Stacy, do you know, did they take 14,000 out of the salary, move to termination payout?
I'm gonna look right now.
Let's hold off on
Sounds
that.
like.
Let's just make sure. But this would all be cleared up if,
Budgeted at the beginning of the year.
okay,
Wait a minute, let me go to termination payouts. No, we put, wait, are they taking from salaries into termination? They can't be taken out because they're negative in termination payouts. How much is it?
they're saying reduce the appropriations and line item,
Of the termination.
and then they're taking money out of termination payouts. And you're saying they don't even, I guess they didn't even check the balance.
We only put 29,000 in there and they've spent 46. It's negative $17,000 in the termination payout line item.
Who's the Board of Elections liaison? I
No,
think it's you, isn't it, Cliff?
yeah, it's me.
Would you be so kind to get with them on that?
I'd be glad to.
So at this time, I'll make a motion to approve all requests excluding the Board of Elections request.
I'll second that.
Commissioner Banks,
Yes.
Commissioner Barrow,
Yes.
here.
Hey, we have Helen Wheatley has put in her resignation of her position at Daystar. That,
So moved.
Second?
Banks,
yes.
Commissioner Barrow,
Yes.
Commissioner Mears,
Yes.
Okay. And this department has 5 vehicles on use, and they would like to dispose of those. Done through .gov.
I think they're scrapping them.
Yes, they are scrapping it. These vehicles will be sold for scrap with an estimated value of $250. And there's,
Sounds like we have good correspondence vehicles for our friends in the media, huh?
You're saying estimated value 250 each?
yeah, I would, having scrapped one before, 250 is about what you get.
So move.
So,
Commissioner Banks,
yes.
Commissioner Barrow,
Yes.
Commissioner Mears.
Yes.
Okay.
I do have one on our other, and
Let's hear your.
in
other-
honor of our former Commissioner Marilyn John, whose district will stay the same. Unlike Senator Romanchuk, who appears to have gotten a bad end of that redistricting.
Well, and they're not done.
They're not done.
They're not done.
Uh,
But yeah, it appears he did.
So brought to our attention yesterday, we had caps on our capital cases and our indigent defense fees. So I just redid the resolution retroactive back to January 1, removing the caps per the Ohio Capital Council fee via the Ohio Revised Code. We cannot have caps on we cannot have caps on capital cases, cap. So at this time, I'm going to make a motion to approve this resolution that removes the caps on our capital cases.
So moved.
Second.
Oh, second, sorry.
You have that ORC number. I did not write it down yesterday when you yelled.
I can send it to you. Our resolution didn't state it. It references the Ohio Capital fee.
I just like to put it in the minutes.
Oh, just put Ohio Revised Code. We're all right.
Commissioner Banks,
Yes.
Commissioner Barrow,
Yes.
Commissioner Mears.
Yes.
Mr. Sellers, how are you? Good.
Commissioner Banks.
Oh, no, Daryl's fine. Would you like to,
I just happened to be in the building today, so I thought I knew you guys were having a community. Stop there.
okay, well,
Just coincidence?
Just coincidence. I tell you, I must tell you, I was disappointed when we were down at Lexington. You don't have to put this in the minutes. Cliff made that miraculous comeback, and I didn't see you down there running back and forth on the stands like you do, getting the crowd riled up, huh?
well, I'll be honest with you. I almost left. I ran into a couple when I was mayor that I had married and talked to them. And then Duke Snyder, who was the quarterback when I played, started talking to him. And Dennis Brewer, he walked up to and says, you guys played football in 65, but don't remember your names. And he was a year older and he lives in Findlay and he comes back for 2 or 3 games. I hadn't seen him since he graduated. So I stuck around and I'm so glad I did because, get to mention that to Tony the next day.
Yeah.
My phone was, well, I know.
Actually, I never mentioned it to Tony till right now. I wasn't going to say anything.
I'm surprised they let him in the stadium. I thought we had higher standards in Lexington. That's my bigger concern.
It is 9:48 and we will stand in recess till 10 o'clock.
Good morning.
Okay.
Now I can hear you. Good morning.
Good morning. Hi, Aaron.
You hear us in the commissioner's office?
Hi, good morning. Yes.
Man, I thought it was bad when we saw a picture of Brady Groves and now we see him. I think I want the picture back.
Are we ready?
Is that Commissioner Vero?
No, that's Mears.
Well, this is the Board of Richland County Commissioners, and we are back in session. We have been joined by Jeff Sellers, local 1216, former mayor of the village of Butler. And from Mansfield, I see Mayor Takers with us, Dave Ramey, and sir, I have no idea who you are.
And I'm with the finance department.
Thank you. And with us is also Jody Perry from the Richland County Chamber of Commerce. And also out there in TV land, got Brady Groves, Aaron Clapper, and Allison Goebel. So welcome to our meeting. And Jody, you want to talk to us about the what you think we ought to do with the AARP money?
Yeah, ARPA. It is confusing. Yeah, AARP.
Get my
Yeah, so thank you, commissioners and mayors, for having us today. Kind of just to level set from kind of where we were, of course, in May. We worked with our friends at GOPC and the Richland County Foundation and Richland Source to host that initial public session. And Allison that evening kind of outlined at that point, you know, what was existing in the regulations and kind of gave some best practices in terms of, you know, what elected officials, you know, can consider when using these funds. So then what we had asked her and her team to do since then was to go back and do a review of things that are existing. What she's going to present today is, you know, really recommendations that we would like for you to consider in terms of places that can be spent, not so much specific, you know, we've got this amount of money to this specific project happening at this date, you know, we're talking more high level. And again, we realize that you all have you are the decision makers on this. So, you know, we're trying to share what the community's priorities could be in terms of, you know, what has already had some discussion behind it in other settings. So that's really kind of why we're here. Brady, I'll hand it over to you to add to that.
Oh, thanks, Jody. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, one of the reasons, or the most important reason the Community Foundation Board wanted to get behind this project was that we believe it unlocks a tremendous potential for both the city and the county. You know, we had a lot of intuitive senses of what the priorities and the assets are for both the city and the county, but for the lack of a concrete plan for either the city or the county, and I'm not saying that as a criticism, few governments have those. We didn't have that document or plan that clearly stated what the priorities and assets are. And I think this opportunity gives us a way to pull that together, stating specific plans and key issues. We are very fortunate, though, that we had a number of existing plans, about 20 different ones that Aaron and Allison had reviewed that were relevant and can provide some of that structure. And you know, our investment, along with the chambers, was to be able to find that common thread through all those plans and present some ideas. And like Jody said, folks, it's not a list of here's what you need to do based on opinions. It's really a starting point for a conversation and helping us form some vision and some outcomes in the future. So we're excited about the opportunity. I don't want to belabor the point. I want to get into Allison and Aaron's findings and give us enough time for questions and conversation, which is the point of this meeting. So, hey, thanks a lot, and appreciate the opportunity to be here. Allison or Aaron.
Great. Great. Thanks, Brady. And good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for letting us zoom in. I have some vulnerable family members at home, so I really appreciate you making this option available to us. So again, my name is Allison Goebel. My colleague Erin Clapper is here with me. I want to start by just very, very quickly introducing ourselves in case you don't know us. So Erin is a senior project manager. I'm the executive director at GOPC. GOPC is a nonprofit research and policy organization that is helping communities around the state revitalize themselves and thus the state. I have a bipartisan staff and board. Commissioners, I'm sure you know Cheryl Subler. She recently rolled off my board a year or two ago, a longtime board member. And if you've been in the commissioners world for a while, Larry Long is someone you may know. He was a founding board member for Greater Ohio. So we have had a long-standing relationship with local government leaders across the state for a while. We're based in Columbus. That's to access the State House and state administration, but the majority of our work actually happens outside the Capitol in places like Springfield, Mansfield, Cleveland, Cincinnati. So as Brady and Jody described, after I talked in May about 6 guiding principles to consider as you're thinking through the ARPA funds, the Foundation and Chamber did ask us at GOPC for help in reviewing the plans that exist right now for the city, for the county, for the city and the county. And Erin's going to talk more about the specifics of that. What I want to say right now is that I'm really excited that a number of those, some of those plans are already in implementation. That's great news to hear and see. And that others set really clear visions that are ready to be moved on as soon as adequate resources are in place. So there was a wealth of information to work with, which was great. And it's clear that planning is already sort of part and parcel in kind of the culture there in Richland County and in the city. Before we get into the meat of the plans, I thought it might be useful to take like 2 minutes just to talk about timelines for the ARPA funds and to talk about what other communities are doing around the state, just so you have a sense of sort of where, again, where peers and colleagues stand. So I'm going to share my screen, and this short presentation is going to anchor my remarks and Erin's remarks, but we're not going to have the PowerPoint slides up all the time because we want to make sure that you can see us and we can see you. So I am trying to host disabled participant screen sharing. Was Isa, your technical director, I think has to give me access.
We made you co-host.
I'm still getting.
Can you?
Yes to that.
I made the Geo.
There we go. Okay, got it now. All right, are you able to see this, these slides?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Let me see if I can make these a little bigger.
Hey, Allison, for the sake
Yes.
of time too, I think we're all fairly familiar with the guidelines, and I'm not trying to rush you along, but we do have a 1045 that's very important. I mean, we know we have 4 years to obligate, 6 to spend. We're
Perfect.
familiar with when we get the money.
Perfect. I'll skip through that slide. So let me just say that a number of communities are starting to take the steps to do revenue replacement, right? Starting to run the legislation through their bodies to revenue replace. Some local governments are starting to disperse. You can see here on the slide, and we'll give you these slides afterwards. And then there's a number of communities that are being fairly tight-lipped while they're trying to do some internal planning. Some places are being very tight-lipped because they want to, they have desires to use the funds in ways that are not fully clarified in the current ARPA rules. And we know that, I think you know that there's a lot of lobbying going on to expand eligible uses, right? So Dayton, for example, is a place that really wants to use a lot of the money for demolition. Demolition's not totally a clear use. And so they've been trying to kind of keep things under wraps because they don't want to set out a framework, which then they'll retract and then produce a new framework that might allow for demolition. So again, in the interest of time, we'll scoot through these. Erin, I'm going to turn this over to you to briefly run through the memos. I know that we gave those to you with only 24 hours notice, although it sounds like from Jody that some of you have read them. So we'll be quick here to ensure that there's conversation opportunities. So with that, Erin.
Great, thanks, Allison. So yeah, now comes the fun part. We'll review kind of what GOPC found based on our reviews. So on the slide here, you'll see we've listed, as well as in the memos that we've provided, the 12 county focus plans or planning reports that GOPC went through and reviewed. In this, I do want to highlight here that there was a commitment of collaboration between counties, the county and the municipalities. So the local government collaboration was a key theme or a highlight that we found from the county plans that we reviewed. On the next slide, we look at the three most common or the highest priorities that we saw. So overall, the county themes focused on kind of traditional economic development. The three most common touch on strengthening the economy through economic development, increasing housing, and multimodal transportation. Within the priority to advance sustainable economic development, the plans looked at business retention and growth, workforce development as key pillars for achieving that, and additionally looked at enhancing entrepreneurship through small business growth, and particularly within minority populations. On the housing side, housing was identified as a priority in the essence of attracting and retaining talent in the county. So themes within this priority looked at building new housing development, especially in downtown, enhancing housing stock through revitalization efforts and increasing affordable housing options, and building new building new development where infrastructure currently exists. Finally, there was the multimodal transportation as a high priority or commonality, and that was focused on maintaining current infrastructure, considering new roadway expansions to reduce sprawl and utilizing infrastructure similar to the housing, kind of building where infrastructure exists when making those development decisions, and expanding transit with a focus on active transportation throughout the county. So on the next slide, GOPC went through and identified those themes and priorities to look at goals within each, with a lens looking at ARPA eligibility. So not all of the commonalities, priorities, or goals that were found in the reports at this time would be ARPA eligible, but there were a few that we've noted here on this slide that would meet in the interim rules and guidance of ARPA, the eligibility. So assistance to small business through stabilization grants, and is identified as a priority, especially for those minority-owned businesses or entrepreneurs. Infrastructure improvements, in particular, we highlighted from the reports that we saw that Belleville had two specific projects that had ARPA eligibility aspects to them. There are likely others in the county that are also infrastructure projects that could be ARPA eligible. We've identified increasing affordable housing options throughout the county and investments in transit, especially to connect workers and residents to healthcare, jobs, workforce, and things of the sort like that. So we also did look at the city plans, and previously, as I mentioned before, I won't go through all of those, but we looked at 7 on the city side. Those are listed here in the memo. On the city side for Mansfield, there was a theme of kind of quality of life and community development as an overarching theme for those. So while the county focused on traditional economic development, the city's focus was more on that community development aspect. And then before we dive in, we just wanted to briefly highlight here the ARPA eligibility and the guidelines have a strong focus on qualified census tracts. And within the city reports, there was an overlap between redevelopment areas of priority for the city and also what are qualified census tracts. So on this graph here, you can see that in the gray or the dark areas, that's where it is a qualified census tract and identified as a community or a city priority. The medium blue is a city designated priority, but not a qualified census tract. So in this, we highlighted, we wanted to show that there is, again, an overlap between where the federal dollars and the program have priority and where the community may have priority as well already. And that's especially helping low-income residents in the city of Mansfield. Again, we had commonalities or high priorities for the city. Those, as you can see on the slide here, focus on expanding affordable housing, and protecting and strengthening housing at all levels, market rate and affordable. Increasing community-oriented spaces and green space and rec space was a high priority for the city plans, as well as an enhanced and increased focus on the continued efforts in downtown Mansfield for a destination that is live, work, and play, continuing on the efforts that are already in place in downtown Mansfield. So similar here, we've identified a few notable goals as well, in particular, protecting and expanding affordable housing in Mansfield. Some ARPA eligibility may be of direct assistance to vulnerable owners and renters through housing and mortgage assistance, rent and mortgage assistance, increasing housing options for vulnerable populations. The ARPA eligibility, the ARPA rules really focus on helping those disenfranchised or disinvested or impacted negatively by the COVID-19 pandemic. So there may be options to expand housing assistance and options for those who may have been negatively impacted by the pandemic. Community-oriented spaces, green space and rec space, those are eligible uses as written in the interim rules for ARPA. For instance, we highlight here the Talby Run project. And then as well as enhancing downtown Mansfield, which efforts are already underway, but there's the ability to potentially assist businesses negatively impacted by the pandemic. One priority was increasing Wi-Fi in downtown. And as well, we had a focus here on multimodal transportation for downtown and then beyond into the city and broader county. With that, I think I'll pop back over to Allison.
Right, and I'll wrap us up here. So there's a lot, I mean, this is very high level and we expect a lot of conversation after this, just to kind of get your wheels turning. So we suggest as immediate next steps or sort of midterm steps, you know, review the memos. Again, we recognize we sent them to you in a very short timeline. So if questions aren't answered today, certainly we want to be available in the future to provide whatever input we can. We are seeing a number of communities create multi-sector advisory or steering committees to help local governments be very concrete about the priorities that they're going to dedicate their ARPA funds to. And so we are suggesting that you may want to invite, in some ways, kind of what the Mansfield Rising profile looked like, right? Where you had private sector, nonprofit, public sector, education, et cetera. These folks who are going to be directly impacted or represent populations that are could be directly impacted by the ARPA funds. The thing about steering committees, right, is that they're going to be able to bring perspectives that you may not be able to access yourself per se, but also it's going to give you an opportunity to generate buy-in and not only generate buy-in, but maybe also potentially identify dollars that could be complementary or leveraged or matched that could help you stretch your ARPA funds even farther, right? If another partner might be able to come in alongside a key priority. Third, the ARPA requires you do community input. Communities around the state and country are interpreting that in different ways. We are very impressed with the culture of community input that has been created in Richland County over the last several years. I think the Mansfield Rising Plan really got individual community members, but also local electeds and others understanding how to have productive conversations in a public way and in a way that really leads to concrete outcomes. So we are suggesting that once potentially you, the electeds, and a steering committee that helps you perhaps set a framework, right? 30% of funds should go to infrastructure, 30% of funds should go to business recovery, 30% should go to housing, right? Once you have sort of those pillars and priorities set in concert with the steering committee, that you could then go to the community and say, we have X amount of dollars for infrastructure. These are the projects that we are thinking of doing, the two Belleville projects, you know, et cetera, get community buy-in, get community input to further improve and strengthen those projects. And that's just an example, but we do see that, again, you already have a culture of community input there. And I think that's something that could be really beneficial in this process. So with that, I'm going to turn off the screen and allow for conversation and discussion.
Well,
Thank you for your time.
You're certainly welcome. We appreciate that. I just wanted to mention that Mayor Terry Brinkus during the presentation joined us. Good morning, Mayor. She's the mayor of Belleville.
Good morning. Thank you for having me today. Great to see that presentation, and I'm pretty hopeful that hopefully funds can help us out there. Thank you very much.
Judy, you have anything you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I just would love to just hear your thoughts in terms of, you know, what you read or heard. And especially like, we're coming today, obviously, again, like I said at the beginning, not saying, you know, we only need to spend this much on this project, but just, you know, what would be your thoughts moving forward? Do you have interest in continuing conversation around a steering committee idea, separate or joint or something like that? Just kind of curious, kind of how this is landing with you, and does it seem to fit with the conversations that we've had in the community over the last few years? You all have been parts of those conversations, whether it's through RCDG or the foundation, Mansfield Rising. There's been, all those plans that they looked at, you know, I think pretty much all of us have been a part of them in one way or another. So does this seem to sit right, or do you think we're missing things?
Well, obviously the city's going to concentrate on the city. The city is part of the county, so we're not going to leave them out, but we're thinking about the entire county. And I'm not sure off the top of my head, three of us are going to make up where it's going to decide where it's going to be spent. Having a committee to give us some advice and to probably a good idea. Sometimes you tell committees yes, and sometimes you tell them no, and sometimes you have a good conversation and the best thing comes out of it. And I kind of lean towards having a separate one for the county and a separate for the city. A lot of our input should come from all over, from Baseline Road or whatever it is up there, all the way down to south of Belleville and Butler, and get everyone included.
Yeah, just to echo, I actually think if we do have a committee, I think both sides need to be at the table looking at the distributions of the money. The city and the county are the ones who got the lion's share of the money. And if we are truly looking at, I think each of us as a government entity are going to do government entity specific projects. We have the revenue. What are you guys projecting? I'm hearing around 5 on your end.
1 million.
Or 3.2. So Pat Dropsy will set up the fund. We know if there's an area that went hit that the public would definitely want to see be the roads, right? The gas tax was drastically impacted last year, and Adam Gove couldn't get the road work that needed done. But with that said, I'm definitely in favor of a steering committee that I think it's important for the city and the county to be at the table. The one thing we have is time. We haven't even got the final rules yet. I think a lot of us feel the rules are fairly restrictive. And you saw that peppered throughout the, well, yeah, this would be good, but you can't use money for that. And this would be good, but you can't use money for that. And this would be good, but you can't use money for that. And one thing the rules expressly say is, yeah, you can't use it for economic development, which was very disappointing, right? We talk about putting taxpayer monies to good use, right? Economic development would be, in my mind, a good use. So I think there's some hope that the rules will be relaxed, particularly as they wade through the public comment. So I'm in favor of a steering committee, countywide, but I think the city and the county need to be at the table. That's my take.
I certainly agree with Tony that we need all the input we can get, but we're trying to play a game without the rules of the game being spelled out. And that's a difficult position to be in. I mean, we got the money deposited or half the money deposited in the bank. What do we do with it? Well, we don't know yet. That seems rather odd to this new commissioner here to have money, but we don't know what's eligible and what's not eligible. And certainly you want to be cautious because you don't want to spend it on something that you find out later, oh, that's not eligible. And then you have to reimburse that. So we're being cautious.
Cliff, just the other day and said, you will be judged at the expenditure at the time of the rules. So right now they're saying the interim final rules, well, they aren't the final rules, shall serve as your guidelines. So they did come out and say they won't ding you if you spend money under the IFR and then it changes.
And then the rules change.
Yeah. So they did add clarification to that. What's that?
I said that's generous.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Any thoughts from the city's perspective?
Basically, we're actually going to go to council and present some spending of that first half of the money that we've got. That's going to be Tuesday. And because we need some of that money to help us in our budget and in our expenses that we've got projected. And in looking at the information, and I am extremely pleased that the information that was given out and all of the documentation that the Greater Ohio Policy Center gave us for the city. What we're doing is falls almost directly with this. We're giving some money to rent assistance and the Catholic Charities organization to help them out with that. Giving some money to Tim Bowersock, which will be working with businesses and those that have been depleted with the COVID and anything that is related to that.
So how you doing? Help me understand that piece. How are you, let me ask, I'm not asking, saying you can't do that. Help me understand how you guys are appropriating money to Bowersock.
It's just business development and those businesses that were affected that by COVID and that.
So are you going to do grants through Bowersock's office?
We haven't decided on that totally yet. At first, we were going to incorporate the chamber, but then the chamber at one time said that they didn't want to. So basically now.
That's true. That was early on before I knew.
I mean, you're coming here next.
Program. I realized that he's aware of that too.
Right. I was going to say that better not be the case.
But then Tim Bowersock also can incorporate the chamber and do that.
Right. It's not a.
And for grants and those types.
Yeah, we'll see. Jody's coming next week. I think you'll see our first, well, I don't want to speak for you guys. I think our first uses of these monies will be appropriations for small business grants for businesses that were hardest hit.
That's exactly what we're going to be doing today. And that's what Tim Bowersock.
Entertainment, hospitality, tourism. Well, our thoughts were when I met with Jody individually, because I couldn't do it with them there, because we'd have to do this, was we mirror what the state is doing, but only for Richland County, where they made 10, 20, and 30 grand available for the hardest hit businesses. And so that's Jody. Well, I don't want to steal Jody's thunder, but that's what we've been working on behind the scenes.
And then we have some infrastructure, water, sewer.
Yeah, you guys have been hit hard there.
Projects that is going to be part of this spend that we've got.
So how much of your first tranche is going to fix the sewer?
About 10 and a half, about 10 point.
Between 10 and 11.
So half of your ARPA money is going to the sewer replacement? That's what I was saying. So how much are you guys estimating to go to the water and sewer?
Water, sewer, infrastructure. Got
Roughly
3.
3 million.
So 3 is going to, yeah, because we know you guys have had some major,
$950,000 will be the one on Third Street, be the sewer project. And then there's another on 4th Street that definitely needs it. And that's about 1 point.
just tell Bianchi to take a pay cut.
I'll let him.
Put that in the minutes. City engineer.
Know exactly who's.
Sewer project.
And that falls, excuse me, that falls directly in line with what was presented and that infrastructure, because then that also will help out the, actually, that does help the low census tract areas that are involved, very much so. So those are the things that, excuse me. Those are the things, and then we have some money that's going to be put aside for safety that is definitely needed, and for COVID related projects that we definitely need.
One internal, and again, I love the idea, you know, we have, what do you guys are at 20, what'd you get, 2021?
Yeah, about 21.
Okay, so we're getting 23.4. So we're in the $40 million are coming into Richland County. And I think we do need to do our individual projects. I think one project we're going to take a look at, looking at the guidelines, is our courts just reinstituted because of COVID. They can't have when they go to see jury and they have prospective jurors, they are packed in. When you see juries, you don't have social distancing. So during we saw this, we have to ship prospective jurors downstairs to L1 and video conference them up to our 3rd floor. So the judges have made a very eloquent request as a result of COVID for a fourth courtroom. And we have some plans for that. But the issue is, number one, I think they eloquently laid out why it's an expenditure as a result of COVID, but it's the domino effect from that. So if we say, okay, ARPA dollars can go to a fourth courtroom, we'd have to move our clerk's office. Does that mean you could also use ARPA dollars to move? Like, I think we need some guidance. But if we do that, we're gonna have to look at that sooner or later because COVID is spiking, right? So I think that's one, what would we say? Internal project we're looking at. But we want to keep the vast majority of this money open for the steering committee.
And definitely one of the things that, I remember Allison saying in May was that, we all realize that you have immediate needs. So, some of that might be the business grants, the revenue replacement, some of these internal projects, I don't think Brady or myself entered into this at all thinking, all of this has to be, just community. We want you to, that's good that you are thinking that way to use some of it internally. If you have that opportunity, I think that's very wise.
We have 2 floors that were formerly the Richland County Jail. Now, we had set money aside. We're not using ARPA dollars. We had set money aside a couple years ago to start removing the bars, right? You can even use L1 and L2, and we're looking at what, $500,000, right?
Zooming in from behind Buck.
Right. So
Look for a jury.
The reason that we're doing this on Tuesday to bring to council is because the immediate need.
right for your sewer.
Our infrastructure.
Yeah.
Water, sewer. When you have a $950,000 and a $1.4 million that we just didn't have the money for, we've got to move forward to do this. That's why we're doing it we just kept waiting and waiting and waiting. But right now, exactly what has been said with you guys and with the Greater Ohio is that we're relying on what the current guidelines from the Treasury is, and then this is.
I don't think you're going to see the revenue replacement. I would be stunned if it changes much. And I think you'll see us do revenue replacement. By that, I mean, at least approve it and get it into the sub fund, but then wait and look at projects to go from there. But we at least need to get it into the sub fund. But I don't think you're going to see the revenue loss piece change very much.
And I don't think you're going to see the infrastructure for water sewer change too much. And the COVID related programs like housing and rent recovery and rent assistance and that. And I also don't think you're going to see much change in business development or business grants for those that have been drastically affected.
Most likely, they would only be loosening things.
Yeah.
I wouldn't expect them to, unless in the meantime they discovered some issue, but I wouldn't expect them to tighten it up. But maybe to your point on economic development or.
I'll bet you'll see something on demolition. Maybe they'll limit it. By census tract.
Some of that stuff.
I think you'll see, because I think you're right. You talk about revitalization of census tract areas. Well, you need to maybe create some green space. So I think you'll see something in demolition. That's my gut.
And Mayor, we just listened to a presentation that from Casey, and they've got quite a bit of money going into rental mortgage resistance, JVS or Jobs and Family Service also have programs for that. I'm just saying, not that we don't want to do it, but there's other programs that are already doing it, so you can piggyback on it. We don't have to replace
dollars more.
Home money can also be used in different things also for that, and we've been allocated and worked on that portion of it. I just think that where our intent was, and I really congratulate finance for helping us out with this, because Scott and his team and Lynn really worked hard to put this legislation together and working with us to do this, that I really am thankful. Thank you very much. But we wanted to make sure that it got spread around the money so that it did help those people that are less fortunate. It did help businesses. It did do infrastructure. It did do a lot of things so that the money gets spread around. And if you look at it, there's a lot that matches and mirrors what's in this proposal for the city of Mansfield. Now, I haven't looked at yours or read yours, but
So what's the next step in forming this steering committee? I guess I'll toss it out to GOPC. The very handsome picture of Brady Groves that we see. Oh, there he is. What's the next step on forming this steering committee?
Well, I'll start. So, I mean, I'm glad to hear that both the city and county are interested in the idea. I think Brady and Jody are probably waiting to provide input on who might, make recommendations on who might sit on that. I think if you all chair these steering committees and maybe you have a private sector or Jody or Brady sort of co-chair with you, and then convene these meetings, on a regular basis, kind of just like any other community input process, but or steering committee process. But I would say to keep the conversation manageable, you probably want to keep it to like 10, 15, 18
No
people.
more than 10 or 15.
Yeah, I mean, just you all have time, but time is not unlimited, right? Like, and residents are going to want to you are starting to move, which is great. I hope that the memos will give the steering committee something to move from, right? So that you can immediately say, like, these things are off the table. Like, unfortunately, a lot of the economic development goals that you have, right, at the moment, put them in a parking lot until the final rules come out, right? But are there things like this, the infrastructure work that can start getting nailed down? And again, some of this is really about just creating the framework and maybe starting to make some decisions about kind of percentage of allocation and less about individual projects. And that's one work that you could do with the steering committee, or you could start to identify some specific projects. But I think as you then communicate with residents writ large, it may be helpful for you to have that framework in place of sort of what your allocation distribution is going to be. That way you can just sort of, you can control the conversation and really funnel focus to the key priorities and noting, this is the amount of dollars that we have. How are we going to stretch them as far as we can? Brady or Jody, do you want to add anything, since I'm suggesting you all be heavily involved in the creation and management of these committees?
Sure. I think, Tony, what we'll do is that we'll reconvene this core group here, put together a project timeline for everyone to look at. We'll look at for some subject matter experts that focus on the things that Aaron had outlined, and then move forward from that. So I think we'll show you the timeline, the folks and the subjects, and get your input and grow from there.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're talking about one committee versus having one for the city and one for the county.
Well, I think if we want to form a separate side committee, we can do that, right? I think we're talking about a partnership committee for big time projects that we could maybe utilize our dollars for.
Yeah, it would make sense, like if there are two committees, to maybe have at least some joint time. And there probably could be subject matter experts that would cross between, like if you're talking housing, could be a potential joint project, things like that. I would say, and we didn't obviously talk about this in advance, maybe just slightly different than Brady said, my suggestion would be, we have some conversation with you all in terms of timeline that you're looking for, and then initial thoughts of people that you think would be great for the committee. I mean, we're kind of you're the decision makers on this, so we're kind of coming alongside you to just try to help you with what's happening and connect things.
I think it's something like this, it's better to over communicate than under communicate.
Absolutely. So
I'm glad you worded that we're the decision.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And the two
We're
committees.
not telling you what to do. I want to make that clear.
And then you have, I visualize two committees, maybe some crossover, and certainly the two community committees have got to get together and communicate to us. So
Yeah. And maybe like thinking like at the chamber, we have the chamber and RCDG, and then we have almost like an executive committee that has representatives of both, that has some of that joint conversation sometimes. So maybe something similar to that, where you're having a separate meeting with some joint people. You don't want to make it burdensome. Everyone's busy, but want to make sure that we get.
And we absolutely do not want more 10 or 15 people.
Yeah, Carl has questions.
Yeah, I agree. I think there needs to be some more committees, but like Commissioner Banks says, is that the ultimate decision is based on the commissioners and the city administration. Because basically, what we've done with the first portion of the money is infrastructure. And mostly there's a lot of it that is going to be used for that and spent. But the second half of the money comes in and we would like definitely to have some type of.
And we've got time to get to that,
Yeah,
which is
because we
good.
don't even get it until next year.
Right.
We have a question from Carl Hunnell from the Richland Source. Carl, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. I know you guys want to be out by 10:45, so I just had a couple of quick questions. If I'm doing the numbers right, it sounds like Mayor Thaker that you've figured out how to spend almost the entire 10.1 million. Is that what you're going to present to council on Tuesday?
It's close.
And of that, almost half of that is for income, is for revenue replacement. So it would be like what, 5.1 million. So what are the plans for that 5.1 million, I guess?
We don't have any plans yet. Basically, that will just be parked as a revenue loss. It's undecided. But we thought we'd better move on that because actually the finance has already submitted their revenue loss
Right, 3-2.
replacement papers or documents.
Just want to kind of set those funds aside that we've identified on
Good point.
plans to.
Yeah, I think we get with him. He's estimating.
Has there been any thought, Mayor, I know when this has been discussed with city council that they had expressed an interest in public hearings or public meetings, public involvement and their own involvement. Has there, when would you expect city council to approve your request?
Well, we're going to present it to them Tuesday at council, and then probably we'll have multiple reads for that.
Okay, have council members been given the plan yet to this point?
It's been sent, the legislation has been sent out. As always, legislation has to be presented and signed out and sent to council. And it had to have been done last Monday before 4 o'clock.
But it would go out to council live either late today or tomorrow. For Tuesday's meeting.
So they won't see these plans until late today or tomorrow.
They should have seen them all.
Yeah,
Well, they should have seen them, but
They-
they will officially get them.
Yeah, they officially, but they would already been distributed
With the request.
with the request.
Okay.
Right, but the city is open to the steering committee for the next year's money.
And the remaining portion of this year's money.
Okay, thank you.
But like I said, Carl, basically, we had to move because the infrastructure issues that we had for water, sewer in the downtown area, in the low census tract area, that had to, we just had to move right away because it fell apart. In fact, you even did an article on that, and we had to move forward because of the costs that is incurred, and we don't have that money set aside for that.
Okay, and is it your thought then, because I know that the dry dam is up for a vote on Tuesday, is it a thought that since you're able to use ARPA money for these infrastructure needs, that would help council free up and make a decision about the dry dam in North Lake Park?
Everything's possible, Carl.
All right, thank you.
Al? Do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? We've still got 1 minute.
If I could, Allison, could you email me the slide deck that you presented today?
Sure. Happy to send it to the commissioners, Mayor, and you, Carl. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
You're quite welcome. Thank you for your assistance, and we appreciate the city, chamber, and local union coming, and we appreciate those on the line with us. So we will now adjourn. We got a lot of work to do with this, and fortunately, we do have time to get it done right. It's 10:44. We will go into recess, and we have an executive committee coming up right now.
Thank you.
Hey, do you expect
Thanks so
any
much.
action?
Usually if I'm startled, I hit back, so. Whoa. Keep you in the middle. I'll come hear you. Come on, okay. Come to the big blue tape.
10:49, and can we get a motion to go into recess concerning compensation?
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Banks,
Yes.
Commissioner Vero,
Yes.
Commissioner Mears.
Yes.
This is the Richland County Board of Commissioners. We are coming out of executive session. We talked about compensation and we will continue those talks. Anything else, gentlemen?
Nope.
Hearing nothing else. 12:15, we will stand adjourned.